Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another episode of Shots of Serenity podcast. I am your host, Jasmine St. John, and this is a beautiful space to land where we explore ways to welcome peace and love into our lives through mindfulness, soul care, and self-exploration. So one, let's kind of like get the obvious out. We are outside. You guys know I love a good nature vibe. However, with nature comes nature. So you may hear some cars. It sounds like there's a dog barking. There are these big beetles that are flying around. So because I love to be outside and I really want this vibe, just bear with me, okay, while I bear with myself. Today we are talking about mindfulness. It's in the beginning of our intro, soul care and self-exploration. I think I'm going to be practicing mindfulness right now, considering that there's the big beat just going. But I'm going to be calm in efforts to record this episode. So this is going to be a little different. I really enjoyed the recording of my birthday episode. And so I did ask Jess if she can ask some questions. So that way it still gives individual episode, but we're able to still have some like thought-provoking questions that I'm able to respond organically and not in that process of me like doing the beginning, the middle, the end, and presenting. So wanted to mix it up a little bit.
What's up, guys? It's me. To introduce myself so it's not just a random voice just coming at you. The first question is mindfulness something you practice or a way you live?
In my mind, I'm like, that's the same thing. But as you're saying it out loud, I think both me practicing it allows it to become a way of life. And so even in this moment, like being mindful of, okay, we've been batching content. I know how I'm feeling. I can recognize it. And I feel like when I'm someone who is starting something, like I just want to finish it. Like I think I'm learning the difference between when, okay, you're pushing too hard and I have a little bit in me. I am focused on the goal at hand. So let's kind of just get into the goal. And so even in that, being mindful of yourself, being mindful of how you are showing up, being mindful of like, okay, this is what you're focusing on. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think in order for it to really become a way of life, it does start off with practices. And practices in itself kind of give us those reps to make things become a little bit more organic. We're human. There's distractions everywhere. Something as big as what is going on in like politics and online, and a distraction of these like bees and it's not even a bee, like this bug going around. And so I think it's a little bit of both, but I would like to say for the most part, I try to be mindful just in my living.
Gotcha. Next question is how does a lack of mindfulness show up in daily life?
Chaos, being chaotic, being all over the place, rushing, not being able to emotionally regulate. I think just because you're mindful of something doesn't mean that you are in agreement with the situation. I think we could be mindful of things and knowing that, okay, these are these barriers, these are things that are coming up, and kind of like as I mentioned, but this is the focus at hand, this is the goal, this is what we're getting into. I think mindfulness as a practice is more so being aware of what's happening, being present, trying your best to not create meaning or attach too much to things. I'm so bad at this because my mind's like, what's the question? I went on a tangent.
It was how does a lack of mindfulness show up in daily life?
Got it. Being chaotic, rushing. I think either being in the past, which sometimes creates depression and a sense of lack, or being too far in the future where you're really, really anxious about things that are very much so outside of our control. And so, yeah, I definitely think it shows up with just like rushing, feeling chaotic, kind of feeling like you're on autopilot, like life is just you're going at it. And so like a example that kind of comes up for me is when you're driving, how many times are we driving and we're like, well, thankfully I got here safely, but how the hell did I get here? Like, was that light red? What was happening? And so I think it can show up in a lot of different ways.
Gotcha. Next question is can mindfulness feel uncomfortable at first? And if so, why? Why not?
For sure. It feels uncomfortable, at least in my experience at first. Sometimes when you gotta reignite your relationship with mindfulness. And again, we live in a very fast-paced world. Like if we want groceries, we can get it within about 45 minutes without having to get in the car, get ready, go shopping. We have so much accessible to us. It's a beautiful thing. Like, yay, that I can record this and not have to be in 25 million different cities, but this has the potential to reach all of those 25 cities, states, what have you. And so, yeah, I do think it's difficult because, one, culturally, that's not how we move. And at the same time, you got to be able to keep up with the Jones, knowing that technology is a thing, AI is here, AI is a thing. And so we can choose to kind of be like some of the old heads or even like the elders in our lives that are like, I'm still on that flip phone and all the different things. And it's beneficial. Hell, on the flip phone you don't have to scroll. On the flip phone you have your little pocketbook and still writing down numbers. I definitely think it can be difficult because when you think of the balance of things, it's kind of like you have to find some type of middle ground with being present and slowing down and executing. And I think that's been something that has been kind of difficult for me in a different season, but also just something that I'm trying to find some type of middle ground in.
Gotcha. The next question is, what does mindfulness look like during a stressful moment?
What does mindfulness look like during a stressful moment? I think recognizing that the moment is stressful, recognizing that a shift has happened. And again, that takes practice, kind of going back to the first question. When we're kind of able to recognize, like, all right, how I was feeling about 5-10 minutes ago is different from how I was feeling right now. Depending on the situation, asking yourself, like, what is it that you need in the moment? And then there's a second part of that is like, what is accessible? And so sometimes what's needed is to completely remove yourself, at least for me. And it feels that's what I need to be able to just take a second. But again, with the example, if there's a goal at hand and I just need to like lock in for a little bit and I can maybe take a few breaths or have an internal dialogue with myself or take a step back but be able to come back in. So notice it, recognize that there's a shift, that you're stressed. See if there's something that you need, or even maybe, I guess, another slash to part two is sometimes it's important to feel it. Sometimes we can't just like throw a coping mechanism and move on to the next thing. Sometimes we got to feel that stress, that overwhelm, that annoyance, and feeling it in itself feels weird and stressful sometimes and icky, but sometimes that's what's needed to sit in it and to feel it, because that creates some space for us to then come up with some insight like, okay, this is a trigger, or this is a pattern that I'm recognizing, or this is an area where I can build some more resilience here. And then I want to make sure I answer the whole question one more time, please.
What does mindfulness look like during a stressful moment?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that is a pretty rounded response for me. Noticing the stressful moment. I guess when you think about what is it that you need, sometimes like a breath and like some type of regulation. And we talk about so many different practices. For me, it is kind of just like breathing. Sometimes I do need to say things out loud or write it down or speak it out loud, whether it's to myself or to whomever. Sometimes I need a few breaths to kind of like, all right, we got this. So maybe another part of that is like a check-in, closing my eyes, verbalizing, like affirming myself and moving through it. Or again, taking a step back, because there's a difference between when things are like stressful versus when it's hard. Things are hard. That doesn't mean we can't do it. But when things are stressful, is it compromising my nervous system, or is this an opportunity where there is tension and some resistance, but is an opportunity to be resilient or to move through?
Gotcha. Next question is, how can someone be mindful in conversations or relationships?
I think doing that work on yourself first, because we're only responsible for our own actions. Even if someone contributed to the feeling, how we respond, that's going to only always be up to us. And so in relationships, I think it's putting that into practice as often as possible. And sometimes the practice is the relationship. Sometimes you don't get it right. Sometimes you are just responding. Sometimes you are in unhealthy patterns. That is the beauty of life, to be able to have experiences to learn from it. Because when we just think about it in theory, we never know until we're in it. I think being mindful is kind of like the four agreements, like being impeccable with your word. When you're saying certain things, like, how would this land? Are you saying it out of anger? And again, we're human. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do say stuff out of anger. What is that repair like? I think being mindful in relationships can also look like knowing that person, knowing that relationship. What are the dynamics of the relationship? What are you willing to work on? Even if you don't naturally want to work on patience, but you love the person, then you take that motherfucking breath, I guess, and you kind of go from there.
All right, two more questions. The second to last one is, what are small daily habits that build mindfulness over time?
Small daily habits that bring mindfulness over time. For sure, meditation. Although it's uncomfortable to sit with yourself, that intimacy only allows you to genuinely know yourself, genuinely know the thoughts that are going through your head, genuinely knowing how you wanted to respond to a conflict versus how you did, or versus how you actually did respond. So meditation, definitely one, being able to sit with yourself. I think being outside, like when you're outside, like how freaking green the grass is, and like there was no internet technology that was created to make it a thing. The sounds that you hear, it's like, I may have heard that bird, but that bird may be a little different. So that naturally makes your mind wonder about like wildlife, the bugs. I think that's one of the people's biggest gripes, and I definitely get that. And I like to remind myself two things. One, I know I didn't do it, but like a lot of those like little kid movies show, we plopped our shit here. We plopped homes in their home and their space and their environment. And so how will we feel if people do that to us? I think the second piece of that is, yes, we brought it here, but also it's outside. Like what do we expect to happen? That's like going, I don't know, that's like going into a Barbie museum and saying like, oh, it's too much pink. Like, it's Barbie. Like, so see what that connection outside with yourself looks like. You may not be able to sit and be okay with the bugs flying, and that's fine. But I think nature in itself just has so much happening that even just taking a step outside can be really grounding. That was two. I think your breath, and even just kind of how I did just now, your breath, and also like the tension that's held. I was talking, because obviously there's so much life that transpired before we pressed play, but saying that out loud allowed me to check in with like, okay, where am I holding tension? And my stomach was kind of like contracted. And so being able to notice that, notice how your breath is. So I think those are like some quick tangible ones. Notice your breath, meditation for sure, and connecting with nature.
Last one is, how can someone become a soft place to land for themselves through mindfulness?
Love the question, love the play. Um, Man, grace. We're gonna get it wrong many times. And then many more times after that. Grace with like other people. They're not perfect. They're not you. They're not gonna think the way that you think. And so if you have an opportunity to have a little bit more grace because they may not have, like, I think you do it for love, whatever that means and looks like for you. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like grace, but still accountability. Don't play yourself. Mindfulness isn't being naive, isn't taking inventory on what was and what is going to be. Mindfulness is presence, is being, it's consciousness, is awareness. How to be more mindful is to be aware, is to be gracious with yourself without as little to no judgment as possible. And then do that with others. There are a lot of times where I'm not graceful with myself, but like thankfully my partner is, and it reminds me to bring it back in. And so we're all here figuring it out, and to be able to help each other is ideal. So yeah.
That was it. So,
Okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I kind of like the questions. Let me know if you guys are feeling it, and we'll see if the individual behind was open to giving some more.
yeah.
So, yes, thank you very much for asking the questions. It was a nice, like, grounding question, a nice middle ground, again, as I mentioned, of like, it's a solo episode, but it still kind of gives like some thought-provoking question that isn't as like structured. I enjoyed recording it, even though the sun is going down. Hopefully nature, you're able to captivate it and experience it as much as you can through the camera. I think being outside, just it has its icks for sure, but it in itself feels grounding. And so this is a little different, but you guys know I gotta have some outside. Whether the lighting is perfect or not, whether the bugs are coming or not, hopefully you still hear what is being said. And so, yeah, taking a little pause on the aesthetics. Love you guys very, very much. I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.